You have a Bible? Luke chapter 6. When I was young, my parents taught me how to lie. And they taught me how to lie very, very well and very, very often. In fact, lying became a lifestyle for me. And I'm very good at it. Now I try not to lie anymore, but I was very good at it. And the way that they taught me to lie was by asking me questions that I didn't know the answer to, but they told me that I did. And so after they tell you over and over that you got an answer, you just come up with one. Well, then when they find out it's untrue, why'd you lie? Well, you wouldn't accept that I didn't know. You ever had your parents say to you, what'd you do that for? And you said, I don't know. Yes, you do know. You know exactly why. I really don't. I just wanted to. Well, why did you want to? I don't know. Boy, you better tell me why you did that. You're gonna get a beating. So I'm like, okay, let me think up something. Let me think of something they want to know. And then you tell them. And the truth of the matter is, I really didn't know why. There's a lot of stuff that we do that we don't know why. So today, as we continue on in trying to help you guys, hopefully to have a new season in your life, I want to ask you, do you know the answer to that question? In Luke chapter 6, Jesus made a statement after going through an entire plethora of things on the Sermon on the Mount, and people were sitting around, there were thousands out there listening to him, and they were all following him, and they were all crying his name, and they were all enamored, and they were so happy that he was this guy that was going around and he was bulldozing over the government and the Pharisees and the Sadducees and all that kind of stuff. And it was getting to the point where he realized the crowd is getting so big that we're not going to be able to move forward. And if I don't need a crowd following me, I need followers following me, not a crowd. So let me address this crowd. And here's what he said. Why do you call me Lord, Lord, and not do the things that I say? Now, he didn't say, why don't you do the things that I say? He said, why do you act like I'm a big deal in your life? Why do you act like I'm God? Why do you declare out of your mouth that I'm God, but you don't do anything I tell you? And what he wanted us to ask ourselves the question was, why? And I think that sometimes my answer is, I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, James said, he said, the same thing comes out of one mouth. Blessing and cursing come out of the same mouth. He said, should salt water and fresh come out? Can it come out of the same well? And he said, in like manner, good and bad comes out of the same mouth. He said, this should not be. Why are you doing that? And unless you know why you're doing something, it can be very, very difficult to make any changes in your life. I want to answer that why today. Last week I talked to you, and the week before I talked to you about certain things, and I think that there are some contributing factors as to the why, and they run under the surface. We're not paying attention, but it's running under the surface. Obviously, your environment can be a part of that. You leave here and you're in a mood that I'm going to serve the Lord, I'm going to go on a diet, I'm going to exercise or whatever, and then you get into a different environment and it goes a different way. So environment can affect it because environment trumps will. I taught you that. It could be that you have a relationship that, you're all that and you're gung-ho for Jesus, and then you step out and you got a buddy that's not gung-ho for Jesus and thinks it's crazy and ridiculous. And as they begin to say, I can't believe you believe that stupid nonsense, and then you're like, it's kind of dumb, and you give it away. Or it could be that, you're hanging out with people that think that this is stupid and nonsensical, and you've got a strong believer that begins to fill you with energy and insight and wisdom and inspiration, and you climb right up out of that environment that you've been in. It could be either way. So I think that your environment and also your relationships obviously have something to do with it. The set of standards that you focus on in your life have something to do with it. And I told you we need to lift our standards, because if your standard, if this is good enough and you're accustomed to this being good enough all the time, you're never going to change until you decide it's not good enough. And you raise that standard, and then you will go a little bit higher. So your standards have a lot to do with it. Also, understanding those 6 human needs that we all have, that we operate from under the surface, unaware of what's going on, that need of certainty. People that are control freaks, don't raise your hand, but some of you know a control freak in your life. Control freaks need certainty. They need to know what's going on, and they're under the illusion that they have any kind of control in life at all. And as they lose control, they try to gain more control, which makes them a control freak. And what they'll gain more control over is those things that they feel like they could control. It could be their kids, it could be their spouse, it could be the people that work around them. They will choke the life out of somebody gaining control. And you don't realize that under the surface, that's what's driving you. It is your need to know exactly what's going on. I will tell you this, you have no control over anything except your own attitude. That's the only thing you have control over. Reality happens with all of us that are in here. I wish I could control your attitude today, but I can't. I can influence it, I can share, but I can't control how you feel or how you think. If I could, every single person in this building will be saved right now. If I could, but I can't. I can only share. That need for uncertainty, that weird uncertain thing where you don't know what's going to happen and you're wondering what's going to go on. And so whenever you're uncertain, it breeds anxiety and stress and emotion and those kind of things. It's like, what's the matter? I just got some news and I don't know what's going to happen. And so you're all stressed out. And running under the surface is somehow it's a control issue as well, because you think that you can fix something. So you go try to fix something that in reality is probably not even broken. It's just that you're responding that way. Could be your need for significance, that you want other people to see you because you live by what I call GOOP, G-O-O-P, the good opinions of other people. And that's the worst way that you'll ever live, is by the opinions of other people. Question to ask yourself, if nobody could see what you're doing and nobody would ever notice anything about what you did, would you do it? Why'd you cut your hair that way? Because you like it or because you think somebody else likes it? Why did you do that to your body? Because there's a group of people that think you need to look like this in your body, and so you do that to your body for the looks. Have you ever looked on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, all that kind of stuff, where people are half naked and showing everything they got? It's like, why are you doing that? Why are you doing that? What if there was nobody to see it? Would you still do it? It's a need for significance, and it's driving you, and it's driving you down a pathway that is not a healthy pathway, probably. Your need for love and connection. We all want love, but we'll settle for connection because it's similar, but it's not the same thing. We don't even know what love is. When God introduced us to love, he introduced us to a brand new kind of love, which is agape love. And if we were to translate agape love the way that it should be translated, or the fuller expression of agape love, and we were to put it in sentences, it might change the way you think. For example, all of us know Ephesians chapter 5, right? Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church, gave himself for. You know that, right? Let me retranslate that in a fuller expression, an expanded expression. Husbands, unconditionally love your wives. Ooh. What does that mean? Unconditionally. Christians, unconditionally love your enemy. Children, unconditionally love your parents. What does that mean? There's no reason not to love them. You can't bring up anything. You can't even have a conversation, because your conversation is rhetoric about why you're not loving them and why you shouldn't have to love them and why you're mad. God's like, hey, there's a better pathway out there. It's the reason we all want love. Most of us will settle for connection. It is why you'll have a battered spouse stay with a battering spouse, because there's not love, but there's connection. And there's enough connection to give me a sense of belonging that I can take the beating to enjoy the belonging. And that's what drives you. There's a need for growth. And this is a spiritual need. This is a good one. To grow up into something. And there's that sense of contribution. When you're contributing to something, you're a part. And you rejoice when you're a part of something, even if it was a small part, you rejoice. So there's those needs they're contributing factors to why you do what you do. I do what I do because of my environment, because of my relationships, because of my standards, because of my needs. I do what I do because of that. And those are all part of it. But today I want to give you the biggest part of it. And it is identity. Your identity, what you think of yourself, is why you do what you do. It's why you stay in an environment you shouldn't stay in or you leave it. It's why you stay in a relationship you shouldn't stay in or you leave it. It is why you choose to take the life path that you're on or you don't. It is identity. Here's a question for you. Who do you think you are? Who do you think you are? Because here's a truth. Everything you do flows from who you think you are. God wants you to know who you are, not who you think you are. Because if you ever grasped who you are and your life began to flow from who you actually are, it would change. But some of us have a reputation to hold. Some of us die because of that reputation. How many people do you know that had a reputation of being wild? And here's where you can really tell. If you've been in high school, hopefully y'all went to high school, and then like you're 10 years out at a reunion, right? So you start dieting before the 10-year reunion, right? Because you don't want anybody to see that you've put on a little weight, which is just normal part of life. But you expect to look like you're 18 when you're 28, and it's not possible, okay? But you're gonna do everything you can, starve yourself, wrap yourself in saran wrap, bake yourself in an oven. Whatever it is you do to try to get that down, right? Hair extensions, color, whatever, plugs, whatever you gotta do to look a certain way, right? Why are you doing that? You're doing that for the opinion of somebody else who's done the same thing. Will be glad when the reunion's over so they can eat some pizza. Right? But one guy used to be the party drunk at the house parties when we were 18 years old. Now he's quit drinking, but it's the 10-year reunion, and so his wife says, "You're not going to drink, right?" "Oh, no. But he's got to hold a reputation. Because of who you think you are. Your identity will dramatically impact you. Let me tell you something. Christians are supposed to live from their identity, not for their identity. But you got to know who you are. And I will tell you that God measures who you are by only two things. Number one, by who He is, and number two, by who He made you. You're not even in this equation. God created you a certain way, and He measures who you are by who He is and how He made you. Now, there's some things that I want to share with you this morning because I want to help you try to get moving, if I can, over this identity issue. A couple of things I'm going to tap because I'm going to come back to them next week, but I just want to touch them, and I'll get back to them, so don't ask me to expand because time will fail me, okay? But I'm going to go ahead and tell you what all three things are I want to share with you this morning because I think it's important. Things that can answer the question, why? Why do I say things, believe things, speak values that are completely inconsistent with my actions? But I kind of really believe this, but my life doesn't verify it. It's completely inconsistent. Why do I do that? I want to answer the why. Why do I do that? Three things. Number one is the content, the core content in your life. Number two is going to be the core context of your life. And number three is going to be the core identity of your life. And I want to deal with the core identity majorly. But let me touch on these first two, and I'll come back to them next week because I realized I brought too big a bucket last week, and so I brought a half a pail this week. And I still can't get it in. Let's talk about the core content of your life. The content of your life is the stuff in your life. The stuff, that stuff can be anything. It can be the clothes you wear, the house you live, the car you drive, the school you go to, the job you're in, the money you make, the trinkets around your house, your posts on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, MySpace, whatever's out there. All just the stuff, just the stuff of life. Jesus reminded us in his word, he said, hey guys, beware of covetousness. Beware of that. Why? Because the makeup of your life, your life is not consisting of the things that you have. It's not consisted of material things. It's not consistent of the possessions that you own. That's not it. But if you look at the stuff in your life, it will tell you a whole lot about you. When there's things that you have to have, why do you have to have them? It doesn't mean that you shouldn't enjoy things and like things. That's fine. But whenever you start to look at the core content of your life, those things that are always consistent, there can be a lot of fray out there that's on the edges and stuff like that. But when you look at the core, the absolute core junk in your life, what does it say about you? What does it say? If you have to have this certain group of friends, if you have to have this certain level of freedom, if you have to have a certain level of living, if you have to have a certain car, if you have to make a certain grade, why do you have to make straight A's? Why do you have to? Why did you just melt down at a B plus? I mean, you went into hiding, you hired a tutor to get that extra 1 point. Why do you have to do that? The stuff, the content in your life will speak volumes to you. Now, here's what I'm trying to tell you. When Jesus asked the question, why do you do that? Because he just gave a whole list of life that he said, here's how life actually works. Remember last week I told you, figure out how things work and then work things according to the way that they work. And so Jesus gave you the way life works and he says, hey, I just told you how life works. Why do you call me Lord, Lord? You know, the one that knows how life works, and yet you don't work life the way that it works. Why do you do that? Because you shouldn't expect that life is ever going to come your way because you're working it in a way that it doesn't work. You're working death the way that death works, and you ought to expect death. Why do you do that? And the reason that we do is because we have the illusion of control in our own life, and we actually don't have control. We have the right to make a choice, but we don't have the same. Choice and control are two different things. I can make a choice in any circumstance or situation. It doesn't mean I can control the circumstance or situation. It just means I have the freedom of choice in that situation. I can get up and leave. I can stay. I can say something. I can walk away. I can not listen. I can not obey. I can be obeyed. I can make any choice I want to, but it doesn't mean it's going to control the situation. We're under that illusion. And so we fill our lives with content. And it's a hamster wheel of disappointment and depression because, hey, you know what I know? I think I've lost, 20,000 pounds in my life because I lose it and find it and lose it and find it and lose it and find it and lose it and find it. And it's so disappointing when you really ever do lose a lot of weight. You're like, man, I'm looking pretty good. And then, 3 months later, like, Lee, what happened? What happened? It was Thanksgiving. Well, then it was Christmas. It was New Year's. Then, I just got tired. And what could I do? I mean, they had that chocolate ice cream, and they had, somebody was forcing me to eat that. It's a challenge. It's a challenge in life. You can only make choices. You have no control. It's an illusion of control. The second, and like I said, I'm just going to touch it. I'm going to move on. The second is the core context of your life. In other words, how do you see life? What is the lens through which you view everything? And I'm talking about the core lens. There's a lot of stuff that happens in our life, and we literally see it through a singular core, but we don't always know what that is. That could be anything from money you make or the values you hold, an event that has changed your life. Many of you see your entire life through an event. From the moment of that event, your life has been altered and you quit living life. You started going down a pathway as a result of an event. I am going to help you with those events, not today, but I'm going to help you master the events in your life. I'm going to help you do that. It's not going to be, I ain't got time today. But I want you to know that that's coming in just a couple of weeks of how to do those things. But what event happened in your life? Was it a loss of a marriage? Was it a loss of a person? Was it a loss of a job? Was it a physical injury? And all of a sudden, everything in life changed. The whole thing changed. And you went on a different path. Because now the context of your life, I know people that have had challenges in marriage, and that's unfortunate and it happens. I wish it didn't. But sometimes it does. And I always try to help a person whenever there's no hope and it's all over with and everything is said and done. As much as I wish I could reconcile, it's not going to be reconciled. They both went their separate ways. But there's always this one person that won't move. And it's like, well, why won't you move? Well, he or well, she. And now every single word that comes out of their mouth is in association with their breakup. Everything. They'll see a brand new couple. Oh, you ever seen those brand new couples that are getting ready to get married? They're so happy. I mean, they're sickening happy. You know what I'm talking about? They make you a little nauseated whenever, because there's this sweet honey dripping out of their lips. It's like, life is so good, and my husband loved me. And you're like, but they meet this person who just had a divorce. Well, he'll only love you now. Hang on, I got a bucket. It's like, he ain't gonna love you later. You better be careful. He'll ban you in the middle of the night one night, leave all the bills on the counter, walk away and go sleep with your friend. You're like, what? What was that? That was a person speaking and seeing through the context of their life. There's a way to overrule that, and I'm going to help you with that, but I'm not going to help you today. Paul said in 2 Corinthians chapter 13, he said, examine yourselves as to whether you're in the faith. Test yourselves. Don't you know you yourselves that Christ is in you unless you're disqualified? Jesus amplified that. Listen to this, Matthew 15. Jesus said, as people were, the Pharisees were asking Jesus, how do you let your disciples eat and they didn't even wash their hands? That sounds like some people I know. You getting ready to say, hang on, time. I got you. Put your hands out. Wash them things off. Wash your face, your body before you eat. You know what I'm talking about, man. They got alcohol to shoot you down. That would be this person. It's like, how do you let them eat that way? And Jesus said, don't you understand that whatever enters the mouth goes into the stomach, it's eliminated? He said, basically, here's what Jesus said. I gave you a digestive system. It'll take care of it. Man, there's acid down in there, not alcohol. There's acid in there going to kill everything in there. Okay, and whatever you don't need, we're going to eliminate it, and you know what that is. And he said, but those things which proceed out of the mouth come from the heart and defile a man. For out of the heart proceeds evil thoughts, murders, adulteries, fornications, thefts, false witness, and blasphemies. In Luke, he said it this way, a good man out of the good treasure of his heart brings forth good food, and an evil man out of the evil treasure of his heart brings forth evil, for out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. In other words, when you listen to your words, it'll tell you the majority of what's on the inside. What comes out of your mouth is the majority, the abundance of what's inside. Well, I've always been a nobody. You ever heard somebody tell you that? I've always been a nobody. Well, they'd never hire me. Well, I've always been the black sheep of the family. Well, I lost my marriage because I obviously did something wrong that caused my wife or my husband to leave me, obviously. I always do something wrong. I always do something wrong. And so you know what the content of the heart is? Some people are complainers and they love their complaints. They're braggadocious about their complaints. People tell me, man, I was complaining to so-and-so the other day. You weren't around, so I called them up. I said, you get the complaints today, hallelujah. And I can see the person on the other end of the line. So I'm like, well, praise the Lord. I've been waiting for a complaint call to encourage my life. What is the content of your heart? Your most consistent speech identifies the abundance that's in your heart. And it defiles you because you can't go beyond it. If a person who's positive, what's a good day? What's good about it? Must be nice for y'all to have good days. I never have a good day. I never have a good day. You know that person that never has a good day? Well, if you're not going to have a good day, have a bad day over there, because I'm planning on having a good day. You know what? When I wake up in the morning, like this morning I got up and I was thinking about, when I wake up in the morning, I don't know that, did any of y'all wake up this way in the morning and go, boy, okay, it's January 29th. I need to get up today to make sure that Pastor Kenny has a good day. Y'all ever woken up that way? Have you ever woken up that way for anybody? The only person that when you wake up that day that you'll do is for your spouse. And here's how that's going to be. Well, if I'm going to have a good day, I'm going to have to do something over here. Otherwise, he or she is going to be all mad. That's the only time you do that. That's it. But for the rest of the time, nobody wakes up saying, I need to dedicate and devote my entire day to make sure that that person has a good day. There's only one person that's going to give you a good day, and that's you. And you get the choice, and you get to decide if today's a good day. You really do. And then you also get the choice to decide what's good and what's bad. And I don't think you know what's good and bad. I'll help you with that probably next week as we deal with this issue, okay? Number 3, and this is where I'll spend the remainder of my time, not only your core content, not only your core context, but also thirdly, your core identity. My mother and my wife both love to like to watch soap operas. Like sands through the hourglass, so are the days of our lives, okay? Or a sitcom, could be The Office, could be Seinfeld, could be anything like that. Seinfeld, I like to watch Seinfeld, but you know what Seinfeld's about? Nothing, okay? On the soap operas and stuff like that, let me tell you what happens on a soap opera. Something happens every day, but nothing ever happens. Nothing meaningful ever happens. My wife was into that for a long time ago. She's not so much now, but I remember many, many years ago, I don't know, 150 years ago, there was this couple on there, Bo and Hope, and they were supposed to be dating each other, and she couldn't watch. I turned that thing on 30 years later, and Bo's like, I'm thinking about dating Hope. I'm like, good night. Y'all ain't got together yet. Nothing ever happens. And our life can be exactly that. If you're going to be a rerun, I want your life to be meaningful. But if it's ever going to be meaningful, you got to answer the question, why is my life inconsistent with my profession? Why is my life inconsistent with what I declare as valuable? Why don't I? Because I'm not trying to. If I were to examine it, it looks that way. Why is it that way? And those other things are very much contributing factors, but identity is at least 50%. So let's talk about identity for just a few moments. I will tell you this, that the most important pursuit you'll ever have in life is your identity, to know what it is. You can teach other people what you know, but you can only reproduce what you are. And that's a real challenge in people's lives because you think, well, I'm really smart and I've been teaching this and this and this. Just look at your children. Your children don't become what you taught them. Your children became what you showed them. They may not tell you that, but behind the scenes, how do I know that? Because I've said it. Well, Dad did it. Mom did it. Who were they to tell me what to do when they did it? Or their friends did it and they were okay when their friends did it. Or they told me, well, you're too young. What's young got to do with it? It's either right or wrong, right? It's good or bad, right? It's one or the other, right? You can't make somebody what you teach them. You can only make them what you are, which is why you need to be an example and you need to work on yourself. It's really important. I can tell you this, most of us, you cannot build a meaningful life until you understand who you are. And for many of us, nothing is more dangerous to Satan than someone who is thoroughly convinced for who they actually are. We're dangerous people when we do that. You literally cease to be human when you lose your identity. And we're in an identity crisis in the world today. So let me kind of give you a couple of illustrations to bring you into this issue of identity, because more than try to just fill you with information, I really want you to get this. Have y'all ever heard of a doppelganger? A doppelganger is like a twin. It's like somebody that looks like you. I don't know if this is true or not, but they say that all of us have like 5 or 6 people in the world that look like us. Well, God help those people that look like me, right? No, I'm kidding. But I've always wanted to see, man, I would love to see I'd love to see my doppelganger or the doppelganger of my wife or the doppelganger of my son. I'd like to see that. I was looking at a news article one day, and there was this guy, he was from Ireland. He was flying back to Ireland. He was sitting in the middle seat in an airplane, and the guy that was coming to occupy the aisle seat was his doppelganger. What are the odds? I mean, that's got like to be 1,000,000,000 to 1 or something. But they sat down, and it was so crazy that they took selfies of each other. They posted them on the web. This guy had a big, burly red beard, and you can go look it up on the internet. You can see them. The only difference is one was tall and one was short, but they looked like twins. And it was amazing. And all the people on the plane were like, that's so cool. So, like, I'd love to see my son's doppelganger. So imagine if I had a person that looked just like Andy, and he walked in here, and him and Andy walked in together. It would kind of freak me out a little bit. They're a doppelganger. Just want to ask a couple of questions. Okay, the doppelganger to my son, what association does he have with me? None. What association do I have with him? None. He just looks alike. He just looks like my son. But it has nothing to do with me, and I have nothing to do with him. Now, my son has my DNA and his mother's DNA, the combination of those two, however that works, he's got that. Unfortunately, he also carries, if I have some health issues that are hereditary, they kind of get passed down to him. But if I also have, some health things that are good, that also passes down to him. My son has my DNA. He has my likeness. He's in my image. He has characteristics like me. He walks like me. He thinks like me. But he also has his own little stuff, so he's out there. And here's the thing. The doppelganger, though he looks like my son, has no association with my son and no association with me whatsoever. None whatsoever. Andy would not draw his identity from the parents of his doppelganger. Andy would draw his identity from me. Let me read you a passage of scripture about God. One of the most profound passages, I think, in terms of God in the entire Bible is in Exodus chapter 3, when Moses, after kind of, grew up in Egypt, killed the Egyptian, ran away into the wilderness 40 years, out on the backside of Midian, got married to Zipporah, comes back, he's walking on the backside of the desert, meets the burning bush, meets God. God commissions him to release the children of Israel. And so as he's getting ready to figure out whether he can do this or not, he says, hey, God, it's just something, I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but he said, when I come to the children of Israel and I say to them that the God of our fathers has sent me to you, and they say to me, well, what's his name? Because they're not going to believe me. What's his name? And what am I going to say to them? And God said to Moses, I am who I am. And he said, thus you shall say to the children of Israel, I am has sent me to you. So God gave us revelation of who he is. He said, who are you, God? I am. Questions. Can God change? No. He says so. I'm the same yesterday, today, and forever. No shadow of turning. God is not the God who will be, not the God who was, not the God who shall be. He is the God who is. I am. God always is. He's always the great I am. I am. I am. God don't change. God can't change. God can't get better. God can't get worse. God can't move to the right or to the left in terms of his character, persona, all that. He is who he is. And so God didn't say, hey, I'm going to kind of let you see who I'm going to tweak you a little bit over. Here's my job. No, God said, I am. I am. And that's who he is. He's given us the fullest expression of who he is. Now, guess who you are? You're a child of God. You were created in his likeness and in his image. Follow-up question. Can you change? No, you cannot. And the reason that you can't change is because he can't change. And he doesn't change, and you carry his DNA. So you can't change. Please get this. One of the reasons that we are so messed up in our life is because we are on a quest to change. And you can't. Let me give you an illustration that'll put you in the spot. We live in a society today that really believes that we can change who we are, what we are, our gender, and all those kind of things. Let me break it down to the most common, basic little thing. To be a female is to have an XX chromosome. To be a male is to have an XY chromosome. What makes you more male? Do you have a bigger XY than somebody else? You ever look at the size of that X and Y? Man. No, they're the same. It's an X and a Y, and a woman is an X and an X. It's the same. I don't care what you cut off. I don't care what you sew on. I don't care what you grow on. I don't care what you do. You are still the same. You are not, if you have breast cancer as a woman and you get a double mastectomy, you are no less of a woman than before. It has not changed. Your exes didn't change. They don't change. When you augment your body and you add something to you so you're more voluptuous, your exes didn't grow. And it doesn't work that way with men because you can't change. Now, you might be able to express the fullest expression of being female, and you might be able to express the fullest expression of being male, but you can only ever be a male or a female. And then the world is trying to change that in your life because the devil knows that your life flows from who you think you are. And when the devil in the garden said, hey guys, just want you to know, God didn't really want to tell you everything that you were, because he knew in the day that you took of that tree that you discovered that you were like him, and man, you just soared. And what happened? They took of the tree, and guess what God said? Hey, I'm trying to tell you, you partake of that tree, you're gonna die. And it's gonna go the other way. We're still biting the apple all day long in the name of fairness, in the name of a lack of racism, genderism, or whatever it happens to be. And it's pure paganism, if you want to list all of it. That's what it is, because they're trying to change who you are. Can I ask you a question? If you were to take the XY of a black man, a white man, an Asian man, an Indian man, and you looked at them, would they look any different? No. They wouldn't look any different because we're not any different. If you look at it in a short man and a tall man, do they look any different? No. And yet we'll pursue down that course. But those things right there limit what we can actually do. I can't be friends with some of you because of your age, your color, your gender, your sex, or whatever we have. And it's like, that is the most biggest. Okay, I still got vocabulary from my old life, so I gotta. My wife, I was a very passionate cusser. I worked in, man, I could weave some cussing together. When I first started preaching, she was like, dear God, please, please. He gets passionate. Don't let him cuss. It's like, I'm trying. Y'all have to forgive me. But here's the thing. Can I ask you a question? Your identity never changes. Whether you accept that or not, your identity never changes. You only choose whether you live from it or you live from a manufactured one. That's the only thing that ever changes. Some of you want to live like Britney Spears. Some of you want to live like Prince in the Revolution, or you want to live like Michael Jordan or Michael Jackson, or you want to live like Kobe Bryant or Tom Brady, or don't live like the Dallas Cowboys, okay? Live like somebody else. Watch this. Luke chapter 4, Jesus was led by the Holy Spirit into the wilderness. And as he was led out there, he got hungry and he was fasting and been 40 days and all that stuff was going on. And whenever he was completely in a weakened condition, the devil came to attack him. Now, he'd been tempted this entire 40 days. All we see is the last three temptations. And those last three temptations are very, very important for only one reason, and that is how Jesus answered Satan. How did Jesus answer Satan? How would the Son of God answer a charge that Satan leveled against him? How would he answer that question? He's God. He's God. He can say anything. Now understand that Satan, his name now, Satan or Diabolos or whatever, he started out as Lucifer. He was one of the archangels of God. He was a cherubim. And the reason that there's only two cherubim on the Ark of the Covenant is because the third one walked out. There should be three. Should be Lucifer, Gabriel, and Michael that are on there. And so now God's got 2 of those cherubim that are left. Satan walked out. Guess how long Satan was in heaven? As long as he ever existed until he was cast out. Guess who created him? God did. Who's God? Jesus did. Do you think that Satan and Jesus knew each other? Do you think Lucifer and Jesus knew each other, or Lucifer and the Son of God knew each other? They've been around for however long they've been around. Of course they knew each other. Jesus, being filled with the Holy Spirit, returned from the Jordan and was led by the Spirit into the wilderness, being tempted 40 days by the devil. And in those days he ate nothing. And afterwards, when they had ended, he was hungry, and the devil said to him, if you're the Son of God, turn these stones into bread. What was he challenging? His identity. What was Jesus' response? Here's what Jesus should have done. Because he might not have recognized Jesus, the fleshly body. Okay? Here's what he could have done. He could have done just like he did with Peter, James, and John on the Mount of Transfiguration. He could have said, hey, Lucifer, you know who I am. He could have done that, right? He could have said, brother, you know who I am. You know exactly who. That's not what he did. Let me tell you what he did. It is written. Hey, who are you? Oh, it is written. I am created in the likeness and the image of God. I am fearfully and wonderfully made. I am a blessed and redeemed child of God. I was created in the mind of God before I was manufactured in the womb of my mother. I am God's child. That's who I am. It is written. Most of you pay no attention to the Word of God to figure out who you are. You listen to the opinion of somebody else as to who you are. In my life, when I grew up, I burned myself at 11 years old playing with gasoline and matches, blew myself up. I was scarred all over the place. You can still see those scars. God has a sense of humor. I wouldn't get in front of anybody because I didn't want to be seen by anybody, and I had to recreate a persona so that I could even make it out there in the world. So I became a clown, a comedian, funny. I raced motorcycles. I was on my way to hell at 180 miles an hour. If I'd have slammed into a wall and blown into a smithereens, I would tell people, that's the way I want to go. So they think, man, what kind of guy is that? He's a guy that thinks about that much of himself. That's the kind of guy that he is. I asked my wife 3 times to marry me because I could not believe that this woman could love what I was looking at in the mirror. Because I had 0 self-esteem. That's who I was, and I had to create that persona. Because my daddy was Chinese and my mom was Caucasian, I was a half-breed coming through school. It's kind of unusual here in Wilmington. Chinaman Chinn, Chink, Yellow Belly, which never really bothered me a whole lot. I thought it was cool. When I got burned, they changed my name. They fused 2 names together. He's Chinese, and he blew himself up, so he's burned up, so they nicknamed me Fried Rice. Now listen, when somebody called me Fried Rice, they meant the wrath of fried rice. I put them in a wok and made them wok char beef. That's a P.F. Chang kind of thing, if y'all. No, they left injured. They left very injured. They were left debilitated because I beat them until I was drawn off of them because they attacked me at the place of my identity, who I thought I was. When God saved me, man, it changed everything. I was like, oh my goodness. I have hurt people and injured. I've gone back to try to say I'm sorry, but you can't really get to all of them. I remember coming up to one day, I said, hey man, can I talk? He's like, no. I was like, I'm serious, I don't want to hurt you. Most of them have forgiven me. Most of them have. But the point would be that the devil always comes after your identity. When Jesus was being challenged by some of his disciples and stuff, and he had something very difficult to handle, watch what he did. These are verses of scripture that are sort of sunk in the middle of very powerful passages on either side, so we miss the fulcrum shift. We miss the pivotal moment. Listen to John chapter 8, verse 14. As Jesus was trying to teach his disciples something and they weren't getting it, and he was getting ready to do something, here's what he said. He said, if I bear witness of myself, my witness is true, and here's why it's true. I know where I came from and where I'm going. You don't know where I came from. You don't know where I'm going. That's why you're asking me the kind of stuff you're asking me. When Jesus was sharing with the Sermon on the Mount and he had shared all that information, now he's gone, he's lived a whole life. He's got his disciples up in the upper room. He's getting ready to go to the cross. They're trying, don't go. Please don't go out there. They're going to kill you. Please don't go. He just broke open the bread of life. He did the Lord's Supper, the cup, the wine, the bread, and all that kind of stuff. And after doing that, when the supper had ended, John 13, when supper had ended, the devil having already put into the heart of Judas Iscariot, Simon's son, to betray him. Look at verse 3. This is a pivotal verse. This is the one you didn't read. This is one you paid no attention to. Jesus, knowing that the Father had given him all things into his hands, and that he had come from God and was going to God, rose from supper and laid aside his garments, took a towel, girded himself, and began to wash the disciples' feet. How is it that Jesus could humble himself as the Son of God and wash the dirty feet of those sinning disciples? Because he knew what his mission was from God, he knew who he was from God, he knew where he came from, and he knew where he was going. So yeah, I can do anything I need to do. Did Jesus become lesser because he washed somebody's feet? No, he's still the Son of God. But once you know who you are, these exterior things don't push you from place to place to place. You'll stop living in the good opinion of other people and you'll start living by what is written. Wonder what would happen if you start living by what is written rather than what is said to you. I can tell you this. When you speak of yourself, have you ever noticed that you use the personal pronoun I? Well, I grew up poor. That might be the abundance of your heart. I grew up without a daddy. That might be the abundance of your heart. I grew up, my mother never loved me. Maybe that's the abundance of your heart. I grew up with a silver spoon. I love money. I grew up from nothing. I pulled myself up by my own bootstraps. Maybe that's how you grew up. Whatever it happens to be, you always use the personal pronoun I. But when you listen to other people, you ever notice they use the personal pronoun second person you? And let me tell you how you have identified yourself. Not by I, it is written, but by you, someone said. You're worthless. You're never going to amount to anything. Well, you're a failure. Failed again, didn't you? Well, I'll tell you what, you got exactly what you deserved. You're hopeless. There ain't no help for you. You're never going to come anything. You are hopeless. I even think God's sick of you. But I'll tell you what, if people knew who you really were, if people knew who you were really like, they wouldn't like you. You're not even a real Christian. Well, shame on you for saying that to somebody and shame on me for listening to it. You don't have a right to tell me who I am. Only God can tell you who you are. And it's written. It is written. When the devil comes your way and when friends come your way and all those influences come your way and whenever the environment comes your way and the relationships come your way and that significance comes your way and the lack of certainty comes your way and the certainty comes your way and your love and connection comes your way and growth and contribution comes your way and it starts telling you lies, you should say, time out, it is written that I am fearfully and wonderfully made. It is written that God demonstrated his love toward me in that while I was still a sinner, he died for me. It is written. It is written that before I was ever created in the womb, he had already called me and anointed me to do what it was that I was going to do. I'm not embarrassed of who I am. I'm not ashamed of who I am. I'm not worried about whether you like me or don't like me. Oh, Pastor, if you keep preaching that way, people are going to leave. Okay, what does that mean? What does that mean? That means it will thin the crowd out of people that don't like what I'm saying and will make room for people that do. That's what that means. But I'll tell you what else it means. I'm going to give you the truth because it might mean your salvation. It might mean a new life for you. It might mean hope for you. It might mean that you're going to look in the mirror and go, wow. Not that you're narcissistic or egocentric, but you might realize, wait a minute. How is it that God told me that he created me this way and all I can do is self-deprecate my whole life so that I sound good to the religious people because you can't say anything good about yourself in the church or sinner. God says the great commandment before Jesus came was that you love others as you love yourself. Man, if you don't love yourself, let me tell you what you do. You love others the way you love yourself, and since you hate yourself, that's why you hate everybody around you. Have you figured out who you are yet? Let me tell you what's holding you back. You don't like who you are. And the only reason you don't like who you are is because you don't know who you are. You need to start reading and just go with the it is writtens. You're going to be good. You're going to be good. When the devil comes, oh, it's written. You see that? It's written right there. Right there. Who do you think you are? All of life flows from who you think you are. If I could get you to make a shift, I'd want you to start living life on the basis of who you are. Not whose you are. That sounds good in preaching. Who you are. Who did God make you? I want to help you figure that out. I really do.